Okay, so they put out the bracket for the Charlotte Major. I guess it was last night I uploaded that video, and then as I was editing it or uploading it or something, they put out the bracket. I think they probably did a draw on stream, but as soon as that last game ended, I just turned off the stream so I could record the video. So I was kind of unaware, but anyways, I did have a link to this bracket in that video, so check it out, and I guess probably I'll link it in this video as well. I want to sort of accompany this video with a map prediction for Charlotte's versus X set. We'll see if I actually get around to doing it, because later today I am heading over to Charlotte for the major. And okay, I'm gonna do these predictions, but I'm only going to do the actual matchups we're aware of, so I'm not gonna guess who's gonna win based off my predictions here or here or here. I'll probably do that on the day. I don't know 100% for certain that I'll be uploading when I'm there, but we'll see. It might be some super scuffed setup. We'll have to see. Okay, anyways, the quarterfinal predictions. Team Liquid versus G2. This is sort of a spiritual successor, I suppose, to the grand final of the Season 7 finals in, what was it, Atlantic City. So not even terribly far from where this major is located, both on the east coast of the United States. And that game was Liquid versus Penta. And of course, I mean, if you're up to snuff on the Siege lore, Penta, that roster went over to G2, not terribly long after that, but some amount of time after that. And of course, none of those players are on that team anymore. They do have the same coats in Shaz, but all the players are different. And then Liquid, it's mostly a different team. PSK and Nesk are still on the roster, so they were, and Liquid was the one that actually won that, so two of the champions from Pro League Season 7 are here. So in a sort of sense, it is the successors, a little bit more literally for Liquid and a little bit less so for G2, but in terms of org lineages and whatnot, yeah, sort of a successor. But I don't think it doesn't really inform what's going to go on here. I do think I'm going to go with Liquid here. They are a first seed, so in that regard, it's easier to call. Also, G2 only has a 33% win rate at this event. They got enough points by going to overtime in some of their losses, and just beating out W7M because some of their wins were in overtime, things like this. So, right, they have one of the lowest win rates at this tournament out of everyone in the bracket. So I think Liquid 66%, G2 33%, Dark Zero 83%, Team 1, 25%, Astralis 83%, Xset 66%, Oxygen 100%, and BDS I think 83%. So I do keep this in mind. The only team that G2 was able to beat was Heroic. Team Liquid took down everyone that they faced at least one time. They smoked Furia that was their last match, right? So I think that's sort of a good omen. And I mean, G2, I think they looked better than expected. Tons of people thought that they were not going to make it through that group. I think that group did end up being a little bit less competitive than expected. But also G2, I think, just played better than people expected as well. But I'm still going to go with Liquid here. Most people, I would say, and most people is sort of a stretch for this sort of thing, but would think Liquid to be the best team in the tournament coming into it, but I don't even think that's untrue. I think tons and tons and tons of people thought Liquid was the strongest looking team coming into the tournament, and well, they've bled more than some of the other teams in the playoffs, being 4-2, whereas we have several 5-1 or 4-0 in the case of Oxygen teams. But I think Liquid will pull it out. I don't think G2 has everything together, and I mean, they just sort of benefited from the point system that we have in place, because if we were just going on win rate, disregarding points for overtime and things like this, then it would be W7M here instead. So I'm going to go with Liquid for that one. And then next up, Dark Zero versus Team 1. I think this is super easy to call. Dark Zero were pretty impressive. I think a lot of people also had Dark Zero going out from Group C with W7M and Heroic going forward, but Dark Zero ended up being by far the most impressive team in that group, going 5-1, even if 3 of their games were overtime wins. Their only loss actually wasn't overtime, a loss as well. And I think, was that one round 15 or round, I don't remember. It was 14 or 15, of course, because it's overtime. Team 1, yeah, they're here just as an absolute freebie. It was them or Direwolves, and luckily for them, Direwolves were pretty bad, even though Direwolves managed to beat them one time. Team 1, both their games versus Oxygen were close-ish. It was like a 7-4 and a 7-5. So maybe they'll take a map off Dark Zero. Maybe they'll even upset them, but it just seems impossible to call them, to predict them. 3 of their players will be in Charlotte, which should benefit them in a sort of literal sense. Like, they'll be playing on better ping, but that means their whole team isn't even physically together, and so the chemistry should be off. And also, I guess if those players are just traveling today, they might be a bit tired from traveling. So yeah, just every reason to pick Dark Zero here, so I'm going to go with them. And if that's true, then we should have an NA team on this side of the of these semifinals, and then we certainly will have an NA team on this side of the semifinals, and a pretty decent chance it'll be two, because Astralis versus XSET, so two NA teams going head to head here. And right, so I do want to do map predictions. I sort of worked out the maps that I thought they're going to play at, but I'm going to do that in a separate video. If I do that in a video, I'll have it linked below, of course. And so check that out if I do end up doing it. Yeah, these two played each other. Was it the very last play day? Was it the final match for these two? It was either the very final or the second final, because the last two games XSET had to play, I think, were against Oxygen and Astralis. I can't remember which one was the last one. Anyways, they did go to round 15. They played on Villa, extremely close. And will XSET get their revenge here? We're going to be playing best of three, so quite different. We haven't seen either of these teams play best of threes before. This is their very first time, and well, you know, again, we've seen them play each other, but that was just in a best of one. Astralis more impressive at this tournament, of course, going 5-1, whereas XSET went 4-2. But XSET did finish extremely strongly with 3 wins in a row, whereas Astralis in their final bout against G2, which was their second to last game, they ended up getting absolutely crushed on Cafe, perhaps revealing a bit of a weakness on Cafe after losing it so handily to G2 and then going all 15 rounds against Wolves. So maybe XSET can lean on that, and again, I'll talk about that more in the map prediction video. But XSET also basically permabans Cafe, so it's unclear if they actually want to take them there. I'm going to go with Astralis. My gut almost wants me to say XSET, but Astralis has just been the stronger team over the course of not only this tournament, but NAL Stage 1. They beat XSET, even if it wasn't round 15, and they were the first place team. They had a lot more points than XSET did. And, right, so 5-1 in the tournament versus XSET's 4-2. And it's up to interpretation which group was stronger. I mean, Astralis did get to pad their stats versus the Chiefs a little bit, and it doesn't seem like XSET had any team to stat pad against quite as much. I think XSET might also benefit from the fact that it is now a familiar team they're going up against. They lost to Cyclops in the very first game of the tournament for them, and I think a lot of that was to do with the unfamiliarity, and then they lost to Liquid, and they sort of got come back on by Liquid, and that might have also had to do with unfamiliarity. When they rematched both of those two teams, they beat them. So maybe now that they are going up against an opponent they played before in Astralis, not even that long ago, because it was at the end of the NAL stage, and also just an NA team, maybe this will help them out in a sense. I expect this to be a tight match, probably go all 3 maps, but I'm going to give it to Astralis. I just feel like they've been the better team, and I feel like maybe not most people, it might be an even-ish split, but I feel like Astralis will be the favorite in this matchup in the eyes of the community. And then finally, Oxygen versus BDS. I feel like this is the toughest one to call. These two are both quite tough to call, but this one especially, and it has a lot to do with what we've seen each of them do. So BDS, they ended up looking pretty good by the end of the group stage, maybe a little bit shaky at first, but they ended up tying Astralis on points, and so just by way of round count did they end up as a second seed. And they were one of the highest point getters along with Astralis. They each had 14 points, and Oxygen might have beat them on points had they had a full group, because they did get a full 12, so even one more game win would have put them above, but that wasn't the case. So we have two of the highest point getter from Group A and the most flawless performance, and then BDS tied as the highest point getter in the group stage of any group. Oxygen, yeah, largely untested seemingly, if Team 1 is as bad as they sort of seem to be. With the way that they lost to the Direwolves. And Oxygen, you know, maybe it's concerning. I won't say for sure that they lost so many rounds to either of those teams, but probably not. Just losing 4 or 5 rounds in just a best of one, it is what it is. They still, if they were playing best of 3s against those teams, they 2-0'd both of them, Direwolves and Team 1. So yeah, they're largely untested in this group, or in this tournament. BDS maybe as well. It remains to be seen if Wolves were actually pretty good and BDS and Astralis were just way better, or if Wolves just weren't that good. Of course, when we see Astralis's and BDS's performances in this playoffs, it might recontextualize that a little bit. My favorite word, recontextualize. And then, of course, they sort of farmed the Chiefs, but the Chiefs did take, I think it was 4 or 5 rounds in every single game that they played, so pretty close to going to overtime in any given game. So Oxygen or BDS, yeah, super, super tough to call. They both have some crazy fraggers. They both had maybe a few games by a few other players that haven't been so good. I think Bride hasn't been as impressive this tournament as he normally is, and Shaiko's been popping off pretty well. Whereas on auction, I think everyone's done fairly well. They've had enough stat pad games at this point. I want to say Laxing had a really bad game. Vertical had a really bad game in this most recent one. Newers has been very good, though. I think he was a big question mark coming into the tournament, and let's see if he can keep up performance now that we're out of the group stage. But yeah, I think is he the highest rated player at this point in the tournament? So I think it will come down a lot to the key players of Vertical and Newers on auction, and Bride and Shaiko on BDS, and of course somebody else could pop off, Laxing, Foxay, Renshiro, whoever, anybody in the matchup could pop off. But I feel like the consistency of the 4 players I mentioned before might be the most important factor. I almost wanted to pick BDS, but I'm going to go with Oxygen just to go with NA for the predictions, and I don't know, maybe a little bit of a shill, but I will certainly be rooting for Oxygen here, so it makes it even easier to root for them if I did predict them. And so that would mean that it would be Liquid versus Dark Zero here, and Astralis versus Auction here, but I'm not going to predict these. I'll maybe do a really quick video after we see these matches and make the predictions then, and of course they might be, because if I did them now, they might be pointless anyways if I get any of them wrong, so we'll see. I think in terms of predictions for the group stage, I got like 6 out of 8 right in terms of who would go forward, and the order of some of the groups I had kind of right. Whatever, reviewing previous predictions, maybe we don't need to do it here. I'll do it maybe at the very end of the event, a final recap thing. But okay, so those are going to be my predictions one more time. Liquid over G2, Dark Zero over Team 1, Astralis over XZ, and Oxygen over BDS, and I guess I just picked all of the first seeds over all of the second seeds, but well, it is what it is. That's what I'm rocking with. Let me know what your guys' predictions are, and I will catch you in the next video.